Harrison Ingram is going to bring a unique and varied skill set to North Carolina, unlike anything else the Tar Heels have. What exactly will the Stanford transfer bring for Hubert Davis' team this season? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade. Joining me today on a Thursday this week, as we've just wrapped up our countdown of my top 10 most impactful moments of the last year for Carolina athletics, is our guy, Coach Paxton Pack Kilby. Brother, it's great to have you as always. Folks, we want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch every single day. Today, we are carrying on our summer roster preview series for the men's basketball team. We are in our fifth week. We've already done the two freshmen, Elliot, Cadeau, and Zayden High, the two sophomores, Seth Trimble and Jalen Washington. And this week and next week, we will do our two juniors, starting this week with Harrison Ingram. It's funny, Pack, how there's all these like couplets of the different classes this season. Pretty funny stuff to watch. So if you missed those, go back and watch them or listen to them, whatever you want to do. So here's how we do this. Pack always hits us with the biographical information for Harrison. He'll tell us about his stats last year out on the West Coast at Stanford under Carolina former assistant Jerod Haase. So, Pack, tell us a little bit about Harrison Ingram and that awesome middle name that I talked about last week on the Jalen Washington episode.
Yeah, so Harrison Claiborne Ingram, definitely an awesome middle name. Harrison obviously comes to us from Stanford, like you mentioned. He will be a junior this year, so he does have 2 years of eligibility left because, he'll have this year and then next year. Hopefully he's a Tar Heel again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be nice. Forward, so he can play the 3 and the 4. He's originally from Dallas, Texas. His height is 6'7", and his weight is 230. So that's per Stanford's roster from last year. So I'll be curious to see how that changes. He's definitely heavier than I thought. I mean,
he's thick, boy. I mean, yeah.
Going back to Washington's episode, he was 225 in a 6'10" frame, and here we have Harrison Ingram, 6'7", 230. So definitely something to watch there.
And it's probably part of what I'm jumping the gun here, but that's probably part of what allows him to do what he does so well.
Absolutely, yeah. And he can mix it up with the power forwards, but he has the versatility and the athleticism and the ability to play with the 3. So definitely allows him to be versatile. Harrison, number 55. He was that at Stanford. He'll continue to be that at Carolina. You can follow Harrison on Twitter at Harrison I Ingram. So that there's 2 I's there. It get a little tricky on you there. Instagram handle is Harrison.Ingram. Some of the accolades that Harrison's had in the past: 2022 Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, All Pac-12 Honorable Mention, Pac-12 All Freshman Team, and 6-time Freshman of the Week. In 2023, he was preseason All Pac-12 team. If we look at some of his stats, he played in all 33 games for Stanford last year, started in 32 of the 33, averaged 28 minutes a game, 10.5 points, 5.8 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 2.3 turnovers, half a block a game, and 0.8 steals per game. He was 124 for 304 from the field, which was good for 40.8%, 36 for 113 from 3, which was good for 31.9%, 61 for 102 from the free throw line, which was good for 59.8%. That's got to be better.
I say woof.
Yes.
That
wraps up his biographical and some of the stats he had from Stanford.
And even, that's obviously specific to his sophomore year. As we were doing all our prep for this episode, I looked back and his freshman year numbers were essentially identical to all this. So if you look at career numbers at Stanford for his 2 years, it ain't all that much different than what Pack was just talking about there, folks. So that's been pretty even keel in his first 2 years of college. So, Pack, let me just ask a big question for us to answer right off the table here. By all the transfer rankings that I have looked at least, Harrison Ingram is the highest ranked of the incoming transfers for North Carolina this year. Do I, let's both answer it, expect it to play out that way on the court? Do you think that of the incoming 5 transfers, now that we'll include James Okonkwo, do we think Harrison Ingram is the most, I'm not going to say best player, I'm going to say it this way, most valuable player for Carolina of the transfers this year?
I'm torn on that.
Honestly,
I think Cormac is probably number one in that role for me, just because I think he's going to be a phenomenal fit, and he gives us that true, consistent shooting that we really need. But then I also look at Harrison and I see that we have a real need for a skilled player that is versatile to play at the 4. So I'm kind of battling it out with myself right now as we talk about it. And I actually think I am going to go with Harrison because we have some depth at the guard play. And I'm not saying we don't at the 4, but he's truly going to be valuable for us in ways that we can't get from anyone else. So I will say that he does prove to be the most valuable
of the transfers. Yeah, I think that would be my battle too. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for me that he'll be more valuable than Okonkwo. I think just in terms of opportunity, if nothing else, I think Paxton Wojcik, I think he's going to do more than maybe you and I originally thought, but still not enough to get up to what we think both Cormac and Harrison will do. I could see a world in which Jalen Withers could battle for that title as well, just depending on what he does. I think, you and I have talked off air before. He's a little bit of an unknown, but also a little bit tantalizing to us. But I think ultimately it will come down specifically for what Carolina needs to being between Cormac and Harrison. And to be the devil's advocate to you, I'm going to go with Cormac actually, because I want to say that with what I expect for him to do from a shooting aspect and for how important that has to be for Carolina this year, I'll go with Cormac, while saying I absolutely hear your argument that because of how unique Harrison's skill set is, he's going to be able to do things that not many other people will be able to do at Carolina or in the ACC or around the country. To that point, last season, this is per Stanford's stats, he was one of just 7 players at the major conference level to have at least 10.5 points, 5.8 rebounds, and 3.7 assists. So a very unique blend of what he's capable of doing. Pack, here's kind of another big picture question I want to ask now that it might sway either my mind in favor of what you just said or maybe some of our listeners and watchers. Here's what I want to ask. Harrison Ingram at Stanford is the dude, number 1 on the scouting report for opposing teams. Now I expect him to be like 3rd or 4th down that chart. Do you think he will be, I'll call it, unlocked by not having to be the guy?
He absolutely will. And and that's kind of why, if we go back to the first question, in my mind, I was thinking, do I want Cormac or do I want Harrison? And I actually went with Harrison because he does have that wide variety of skills. But also, when you look at his time at Stanford, you mentioned he was the dude. He was having to create shots. So when you look at what his percentages are from the field, especially from the three-point line, you go, he's probably just an average shooter. Well, he was shooting contested shots because he was drawing the opponent's best defender. He was shooting shots off the dribble because he was the guy and he was trying to create and do things. I don't think he'll have to do that as much at Carolina. And I think that will allow him to be more efficient and more effective. And so I think that's going to unlock him and his abilities. And we may even see a side of him that we haven't seen a lot of from him from his time at Stanford, in the sense that because he's, third, fourth, or fifth on the scouting report, he's going to be able to do some things off the dribble now and create for his teammates. And so it's just going to unlock him overall to be a more well-rounded player, which he's already does a great job of. But I think we're going to see even more of it. And I think we're going to see more efficiency because of it as well.
And I think that ultimately gets him being back to the player he was in high school and why he was so highly recruited. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like we see players all over basketball that if you took them and made them the number one option on a team, they would not shine. But having guys around them who are that, it's like, yeah, that's why this dude is so valuable, whether it's at the college or NBA level, whatever it is. And I think Harrison is that type of player, which again is not a knock on him. It is a more than reasonable thing. That said, Pac, the next thing I want to look at is what type of lineups he will fit well with at Carolina, whether playing the 3 or playing the 4. I want to have that conversation as well at looking at what does it look like for Harrison to have a successful first season at Carolina. We're going to talk about all of that in just a second. But first, this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to over-unders to who you think is going to hit the first home run in a game. All of that comes on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Beyond that, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Hey, want to tease ahead to tomorrow's show just a little bit. Pac and I are going to be back together again on tomorrow's show doing a summer draft of who guys, what players from Carolina alums we'd like to come see play with the guys in the summer, and what skill sets or what traits we'd like to see those specific people instill in the team. And then also, I just want to have a little unpacking it segment with Pac where we talk about the importance of summer and pickup and what that can do to prepare a team. So make sure you check out that episode tomorrow. All right, Pac. We know that in the conversations Coach originally had with Harrison Ingram, it was recruiting him to come play the 3 at Carolina. Because of some of the speculation of what we think might be a little bit of a small ball lineup or other things like that, you and I have talked a lot about we think we'll see Harrison starting at the 4 instead. Now, obviously, he's going to wind up playing time at both. And so what I want to ask you and us to do is what sort of lineup would Harrison best be suited to play in at North Carolina as the 3 with specific players named? And same thing with him playing at the 4. What do you think?
Well, when I look at him playing the 3, I think it's his success is more dependent on the guards around him and less on who's in the front court. So, and what I mean by that is Harrison is just very good at just creating, and he's got great court vision. He's got great passing ability. So what I see there is like RJ and Cormac, because they're both threats to shoot the 3 ball at a very consistent rate. That frees Harrison up to be successful, to do that, to do his thing with his creativity. And it also allows him to be more of a catch and shoot shooter, which is where we talked about earlier, where I think he's going to improve in his efficiency from the 3-point line. So I look at that, and then I look and say, if he's at the 3, then probably Washington at the 4 and Baycott at the 5.
Yeah.
Or Okonkwo at the 5. The reason I say Washington there at the 4 with him is because I think, those two, Ingram and Washington, could get into some pick and roll, pick and pop situations that could be dangerous if Washington proves to be the shooter that we think he can be and will be. And so I just think that makes for some success. Whereas Withers is more of I just view him more of an athlete as of right now. I'm not necessarily going to come out there and light you up from the field. So I definitely think Harrison is better suited to have shooters around him because of the way he creates for his teammates.
Yep.
And then,
go
sorry.
Well,
and then I was just going to look at if he plays the 4, what that looks like for him is more of a definitely put him out there with Baycott, because I think those two are going to have a great connection. Yeah. And I think Harrison is someone, based on watching him play at Stanford, understands the importance of feeding the post and playing off of that. And then I still really like Cormac and RJ with Harrison, and even Cadeau and Trimble too. Trimble's good at moving off the ball, and I think that could be well.
If you had Trimble in that lineup, who would you sub him in for?
Probably Cadeau, just because I still want to keep the shooting with Harrison because of the way he can find those guys. But, when you have Cadeau and you have Harrison Ingram on the floor, you've arguably got the 2 best passers in the ACC on the floor at the same time. And then you've got Baycott, who's an All-American, RJ Davis, who in my mind is an All-American, and I think he'll prove to be this year if he stays healthy. And then you've got Cormac Ryan. So you've got threats all around him with great vision and creativity. So that could be a really dangerous lineup.
Yeah. I'm right with you. I've got nothing to add on either of those because that's exactly what I would have gone with on it, on either of those. And I'm with you. All due respect to Elliot, I think because of the similarities in the elite skill for both Harrison and Elliot, I think with Harrison at the 3, it makes sense for it to be RJ and Cormac at the 1 and the 2. So right with you on all of that. Okay, Pack, let's look quickly at just any strengths or weaknesses we haven't really touched on with Harrison. I mean, I think the big question is, we've heard so much about him as being like a true point forward, a distributor. Like, is that the thing that he brings that really just sets him apart at Carolina?
Yeah, I think so. But I will throw something in there just from watching him in his time at Stanford and going back and looking at highlights and getting excited about what he can bring. He is sneaky good in transition. So just take that little note, stick it in your back pocket, wait for the season to roll around. I think he's got some, he's reserved, right? And he plays this like jack of all trades type game, but he's low key explosive, and he does have good decision making and passing ability in the open court. And I think that with the expected change of pace that we're going to play with this season, that's going to prove to be a real strong suit for him.
Interesting. Yep, I agree. And I think another thing I would add is what I think he's going to be a strong asset on both ends of the court. You talked earlier about how thick he is, and I think what he's able to do on defense, I think people look at him and, man, like, oh, 6'7", 230. Is he going to be able to hold his own in the paint against maybe some bigger 4s? Yeah, absolutely he is, because of that girth he has. You ain't going to move this dude. And then because of that athleticism, he can stay with you. And so I want to make sure folks are watching out for him as a two-way player, as what he can do there. But, man, I see legit point forward capability with him. Led Stanford in assists last year. I mean, that's pretty crazy for somebody to do at playing at the 3 and the 4 and stuff like that. And so between that and Elliot, again, I'm just going to continue to say there's no reason this team should be anywhere near being 50% or below on assist percentage next year. Pack in, we talked about his free throw lack of shooting last year. Is there anything else that's like just glaring that you would see for him to work on, or that if you were an opposing coach, you would try to exploit?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got to, you're right. He's got to shoot better from the free throw line, and then he's got to shoot better from the 3-point line. I mean, those, he's still under a point per possession with 32% from 3. So he needs to get better there. And I do think he will, because like we talked about, I think it's going to be a lot more catch and shoot in rhythm shots for him this year versus having to create his own shots. And that'll help with that. But I think you nailed it with the free throw line. I mean, we need to shoot 70 to 75% as a team. And I think we have the capability of doing that or even better. And so we need him to be better from the free throw line.
Yeah. And he did shoot better from the free throw line his freshman year. I know I said most of his stats were similar, but he shot 66.3%, which is better than last year, but still that's 4 percentage points shy of 70. Like, this dude should be shooting at least in the 70s. So we need to get to that. Another thing with Harrison is, I think if I was an opposing coach, I would try to turn him into a shooter. I think you've talked about that before, Pack, but that just continues to roll around in my head. Is it's like, don't let him be a playmaker. Make him be the one to beat you, similar to like what happened at Stanford. So that's something I would look to do. Now, last question we usually like to ask in this second segment of our roster preview shows. Imagine you're Hubert Davis sitting down at the end of the season. It's been a successful year for Harrison Ingram, if what?
I think it's been a successful season for Harrison if he's a stat sheet stuffer. It's like we talked about. He doesn't have to come be the dude. He's got to be just a jack of all trades for us. And I see that for him. I really do. I think he's in a great spot. It's going to be a great fit. But if he can come in and go 25 to 28 minutes, which I definitely expect, and be 5 assists, 4 rebounds, couple steals or couple deflections, and 10 to 12 points per game, that's exactly what we need him to do. And I think that's what he will do. So I expect him to have a successful season.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to think he couldn't just really fill it up in a multitude of ways for Carolina. And we've had players that have done that, but there's just feels like he'll do that a little bit differently than we've seen. I don't really know what it is or how to put my finger on it, but I see that happening in unique ways this season. Now, we always like to kind of end these roster preview shows, kind of get into a few comps. We're going to look at a comp for Mr. Harrison Ingram, and I've got some over-unders for Pack and myself to look at. Always fun to kind of tantalize Pack a little bit with that and mess with his mind. We'll get to those in just a second. All right, Pat Kilby, I'm always curious to see what you're going to come up with for a comp. Either somebody that played at UNC that Harrison Ingram reminds you of, somebody that's an NBA player, or from another college, maybe a little bit of both. What do you have in store for us for Harrison Ingram?
Well, I don't quite think there's anybody that's played at Carolina that's really comparable to Harrison Ingram. So I'm going to go definitely more the NBA route here.
Okay.
And this is maybe controversial. I may get lit up in the comments because I feel like this guy that I'm fixing to name is either loved or hated, and there's really no in between. But I'm going with Draymond Green.
Ooh.
And the reason I go there is because he's a lot like what we've talked about previously. He's a stat sheet stuffer. He's more likely to give you a quadruple nickel than he is to light you up for 30. He's solid in rebounds. He's solid in assists. He's a good passer. He has a high IQ. He's a decent defender. He does a lot of things well. And that's what I think Harrison does. I think he's very well-rounded, and I like that comparison for him.
Yeah, I like that. And it goes back. Remember earlier in the show, I was talking about like guys, when we talked about unlocking Harrison, it was like guys that when they're third or fourth and just do all the stuff that keep a team together. Like you look at the Warriors in their heyday, and it's Steph and Clay and pick your own big, whoever it was going to be. And then Draymond just helping do all the little things that keep the team together. I think that makes a ton of sense, Pack. And here's what's funny. When you were talking about that earlier, I thought about Draymond Green. And so I looked up what size was Draymond at Michigan State? You're never going to believe it. 6'7", 230 his senior year. Wow. Just like Harrison Ingram. Now, Harrison, that was obviously his sophomore height and weight. But, it's very clearly there. in so many ways. And the good news is Harrison isn't quite the turd that Draymond often seems to be. And so glad that he's a team. Like, I loved all those pictures when they were at the beach at Outer Banks a couple of weeks ago. And there was the pictures of them playing Uno. And there was one of Harrison just straight mean mugging. And it was hilarious. Like, you could tell he was just trying to be funny. I'm like, man, that's cool. Like, teams need that. And so I love that Draymond comparison. That's a great call. Honestly, I hope you don't get lit up on that one because it makes a ton of sense to me. So I'm here for it. And obviously Harrison would love to have the type of career that Draymond is having. All right, Pack, you ready for over-unders?
Let's do it.
Oh, I got 3 of them today. I'm actually going to start with assists. I'm setting it a little bit higher. I'm going to say 4 assists a game.
I'm taking the over. The over. Yeah. I think we're just going to be a much more unselfish team. I think we're going to be in transition more. And like I mentioned, I think he thrives in those types of settings. We got better at shooting. I'm taking the over.
Okay, boy, that would be, I mean, can you imagine, like, how about this? If he and Elliot combined for 10 assists a game, that would be, I think that would put us in a good spot.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I would say it's more likely that will happen than not.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's true. Man, wow, that's wild to think about. I hadn't put that idea together in my head till just now. I'm going to actually take the under on this, but I don't think it's much. Like 3.5, I think is where I'm going to land on Harrison. I wouldn't be surprised to see it take the over, but I think 3.5 is the number I'm going to land on, but I would love to be proven wrong. So hopefully that happens. All right, Pack, let's go to rebounds. I'm saving points for last. Over under 5 rebounds per game. And as a reminder, Harrison last year at Stanford, 5.8 rebounds per game.
I'm taking the over again. I just with Harrison playing the 4.
If that's what happens, which is our assumption.
Yeah, it's an assumption. And in my mind, that's where I see him. He has to rebound well.
That's right.
And so I think that's going to be something he's really committed to. It's going to be something the staff is probably harping on. And I think that's something that'll be a really big priority for him, and he knows he needs to do. So I definitely think that he's going to get 5 or more rebounds per game.
Okay. I'm with you on that too. And for this exact same reason, like if he's playing the 4, Carolina needs him to be at like 7 a game, I think, to kind of help Mondo out. Honestly, even when he's playing the 3 more, I think that is a reality as well. So I'll go with that too. All right, Pack, here's my last one for today. Over under 10 points per game. Both years at Stanford, he was at 10.5.
Yeah, I'm taking the over again. So if he gets the over on all 3 of these, he's going to have a heck of a stat line. But I really believe in him as a player. And I don't think it'll be much. I think it'll probably stay around the 10.5. I think it'll be a more efficient 10.5 based on what I said earlier. But I do think he gets the over there. What about you?
Yep, I'm buying it. Give it to me. I'll go 12. 12 points a game is what I'm thinking for Harrison. And like you said, I mean, if he does hit the over on the assists like you're talking about and could get up to 5, to average 10, 5, and 5, there ain't going to be many dudes in the country doing that, Pack. I'm here to tell you, right?
Yep, I agree.
That would be massive. And if he does do that, I'd have to switch my vote from Cormac to Harrison being the most impactful transfer for Carolina this season. So, woo! Fun stuff. Great to talk Harrison Ingram. Great to get to the upperclassmen. I'll be talking about some juniors. We're going to continue next week with Mr. James Okonkwo, the junior coming to us from West Virginia. Friends, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you being with us. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. Follow Pack at Coach_K23. Follow me at Isaac Shade. Hey, shoot us an email, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Would love to have more conversations with you. Don't forget to subscribe to the show anywhere on audio platforms you listen, or if you watch on YouTube, subscribe there. Smash the like button to let us know you're here, and leave some comments on today's show. I want to remind you that it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. right? You know it. For those of you watching, you know, you see Pack rocking that awesome penny jersey there, that practice jersey. Good stuff. You'll love to see it. That's how you know it's a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk to you again tomorrow when both of us are right back with you. But until then, peace.